Peace, peace, peace. Greetings. Oh, it's an early one, but I'm not gonna delay this one. Well, man, I'm trying to see where I start. Give an honor to Source, the Creator. Give an honor to all. Clap it up for yourself. Oh, man. Is it me? Or is this, it seemed like it's like, wow, how so many things are shifting so rapidly. The energy right now is like, whoa. This topic right here, because I don't even know how brief I would be with it, because I was in a process of just, lately here, I just been getting up, and like I said, it's the energy or the mood. I know a lot of it has to do with the shift, but it seems like individually and collectively, we've been purging a lot of things. But this topic right here has a lot to do with, I really want to get some of this sun, man. Ooh, feels so good. But this one right here, let's see. Can I set this up right here? Can I get this set up? Come on. Okay, this topic right here. Whoa. Internalized anger. That's how I can quote this. Internalized anger. Whoa. If I ain't ever in my life really came to a lot of awareness of how much internalized rage, anger, that I've had built up for like, oh my gosh. Like when I say it's, and like how this has played out has a lot to do with a lot of childhood woundings, a lot of childhood traumas, and just the behaviors like emotional impulses. It's like I haven't really like paid attention to this now until like my early 30s in a sense. And I'm not saying that age has a lot to do with it, but it does have a lot to do with maturity wise in like just a self-awareness. It may look different for everyone, but just my experience from myself is it's been very challenging, man. And I want to say it has a lot to do with me finally reaching that place within myself. Let me see. I want to sit this up higher. That place within myself that, okay, I feel like this gonna be perfect. Come on. Okay, perfect. That place within myself that I realized like now finally breaking free or liberating myself from certain toxic relationships and or karmic relationships, however you want to say it. I just realized like, whoa. Like I know a lot of y'all heard me talk about my relationship stemming from my mom. But I never really talked about a relationship that I only kind of developed a little bit with my father. But the man that I did have there wasn't so much of a healthy dynamic when I was younger. I've tried certain things with my father, but now I'm realizing how much of what I learned from another man and even noticing the pattern of just seeing relationships that were so unhealthy and just normalizing, just seeing that as being normal and accepting that as the norm and how much that affected my relationships, in my teenage, young adult, or again, just the process of how this is unfolding. So for me, I didn't realize like how much internal rage and pain that I've developed through the years that, we may unconsciously not even realize that we have kept this in so much, and it's to say on both parts. Come on, cat. Say hey, Aries. Okay, say hey. Okay, now I'm gonna put you down because I'm trying to do something. Like I said, I don't even know how a lot of this is gonna come out, but lately here, man, my I guess it has a lot to do with when you hear me talk about the emotional aspect of who we are, which we developed from our mothers. But I'm starting to get a lot of like how that relationship was very cruel in a way. It wasn't really as supportive as I thought until I realized that I had, learning now to develop Aries, learning now to develop like healthy relationships with women and how much subconscious fears come up around like to trust that again. And so even with that, that has been a process. That can be a challenge for all of us that are in these stages in our life, where we are early 30s or late 20s, where you really come into that maturity of, being really self-reliant or accountable. It may look different for everybody because everyone's upbringing is different. But I have noticed with myself how much, how I have developed a lot of emotional intelligence around this whole realizing, having to deal with and or tolerate an emotional unavailable caregiver or people in my life. So that just really like a lot of things have been coming up that I thought that were brushed up under the rug. But I realized seeing people who have done that for so long, you realize you inherited these same things only to face it now and be a generational curse breaker. So I realized within myself, like, whoa, I got to talk about this. And I don't even know how it's going to come out. I don't even know how, I don't care how organized it's going to be and so forth. I guess Aries wants to talk too because God, I'm trying to talk and she like distracted me. So, going back to the childhood traumas and experiences, I'm realizing even at this age, and this is why I talk about it a lot, like a lot of those things that we thought were dormant or pushed away in our subconscious, those fears, they illuminate in a lot of ways. They come up in a lot of ways through our interactions with people. I'm learning something even on my journey, like having developed so much of a toxic relationship and having, dealing with people that I realize now, developing that narcissistic template or, those traits, those characteristics of, being controlled, being emotionally manipulated, it really has brung up a lot just interacting with women. So a lot of women don't realize, like a lot of men, a lot of things we've been harboring and keeping within ourselves and our interactions with women has affected our relationship, not so much with y'all, but really with ourselves. So we're learning now, again, as I've spoken before, to meet you at that emotional level. But that is a process because of how much we have been emotionally manipulated by the women, in our family dynamics. We've taken on this narrative like this is how I'm supposed to be treated by women. And we don't even realize it's like some of our interactions, we have, not even aware that we're taking on this narrative that this is normal. And so a lot of us right now have so much internal rage because we're getting clarity of like realizing, whoa, hold on. That relationship was never built upon honesty. Man, hold on. That relationship, I really brushed a lot up under the rug. I really just, I was really self-sacrificing myself for the sake of others' happiness. I really was putting my comfort second. I really was putting myself second above everyone else's, putting my happiness, putting my joy, putting my everything, on the back burner for everyone else to be served first. And I'm not saying not to be there and help people, but it's just the dynamic or how a lot of this has played out. And so you really, there's been times where I like wanted to beat myself up because I'm like, how could I do this? Why do I keep giving so much to people? And then when I look at everything in its totality, I haven't seen it. I saw men, I saw women, again, that didn't talk to me about the importance of emotions, didn't talk to me about how to navigate them. So now I'm facing things that in my early 30s and like, whoa, I thought I was angry back then because I realized those behaviors where I didn't know how to process them. Then you see like this is how I realized how from those childhood traumas, how domestic violence came to be. Because as soon as someone did something and I was triggered by it, having no awareness of how important, not knowing that the emotion is here to guide me instead of allowing it to guide. Well, yeah, I'm being guided to my emotions and seeing the awareness that I can honor and value it rather than the self-control aspect of that, the discipline in it, rather than allowing the emotion, the anger, the rage, or the frustration to determine or dictate my life. And so we as men haven't been shown this. Television hasn't shown us this. A lot of us didn't see this in our lives. So I realize now, a lot of people that I even know, like with myself, seeing the young men, again, not having no sense of direction about how to navigate their emotions because they have dealt with women and or men, but especially since we get a lot of our emotional intelligence and learning our emotional resonance from our mothers and what it is to be nurtured, to be loved, we never were loved. We never were nurtured. When I look at my experience, a lot of the rage and the pain that I've carried, and I had to realize to talk about it because not let it haunt me, because I had to assess it, then actually talk about it because, me now being at a place within myself, I'm realizing now the balance of when I wasn't self-aware of my emotions when I wasn't, knowing how and who to talk to about it. And then when I did, when I wanted to, it wasn't available. I didn't have, there was no one that I could really talk to it about. And if I did, they still had another responsibility to someone else or even to themselves. So I realized this is what I'm seeing with the young men, all of us, where no one's exempt. I just realized a lot of, with my mom, again, having a mother and or grandmother who really wasn't in tune with their emotions. Me doing some research and came across this other video and his sister was speaking about how the feminine principle in itself is more relaxed, flowing, ever changing in a way. And, at peace because, it's like the flow of the water. And so, and that can be described, so many ways, but just realizing having to visualize women who were the opposite of that. So here I am as a man taking on this as this is what a woman and or women should be. So you're talking about a lot of us have gone through these experiences and, being fed this narrative, because that was my world at the time. Again, my reality and your reality were completely different growing up. So I'm not at all crying out for sympathy. I'm just learning now to have empathy for myself, compassion for myself and or the women, because having now to break away and liberate myself from those very people and or women to allow the healing process, to allow to see why I have this internal rage and pain that I didn't even realize all this time, throughout the years that it was really there because again, suppressing that emotion. And now I'm realizing that suppressed emotion and or pain has a lot to do with that internal rage, that internal battle that was I inherited through whether my mom or dad. And then I'm realizing a lot of things that not having a lot of communicative and or physical dialogue with my father, when I was young, so a lot of that, again, trying to make sense and process that, questioning yourself as a young boy, young man, like, where's my father and or what happened? And then learning his side of the story, learning my mom's side of the story, then it all coming full circle when you come to the self-realization, like, wow, hold on. I cannot keep holding on to their burdens. I got to respectfully distance myself because him being there or trying to be there, but him living in a whole nother state, him living somewhere else, again, we think it doesn't have an effect on us, but that really has an effect on a lot of men because, again, we're in this relationships with, women who have this self-hatred, internalized by what they have experienced, not only with their mothers, but with their fathers and or people around them. So then they begin to smother the young men. They begin, because I guess I'll just talk about this because, I'm going to make another video on this, but just seeing how I develop a lot of this internal rage and pain. I had a sister, where my mom expressed to me one day, like saying how my sisters felt that I was being favored just because I was the boy. And, at the time, when I really reflect on that, I can see through the lens of a naive child that don't realize and unaware that his mother at that time was can only go based off the tools that she had, but also naive because when I was younger, I wasn't not aware at all that my mom was on drugs. I had no idea. And then you're telling a child this and they're not, come on, my mom's not doing that. I'm not going to believe that. That's here you are just thinking like your mom, we as children, when we're young, we think our mom and dad can do what they call wrong or do. That's bonkers. No, they cannot do that. Nah, my mom's not. But there were things that I heard so young that, again, I didn't want to believe them. Then you come into an age when you're realizing that it's brought right to your face. And this is not to devalue her in any way or anybody, because again, a lot of us have dealt with people with addictions and we didn't even realize that they were doing it right up under our nose. Certain patterns where you have people that, have stolen from you and then look into your face and tell you they didn't do it, but you're aware, then you brush it up under the rug because this is your mom, this is your dad, this is your such and such. And a lot of things like that, they creep up and find you again like, wow, that really hurt me that this person will come to that, to do that to me or to even have the courage and then not even apologize, you know what I'm saying, about certain things. So, my sister had mentioned like she felt like I was getting favored, but in reality, what it was is that when I really reflect on my relationship with my mother, I had a mother that was more out into the streets, fighting her own spiritual warfare, her own internal battle. And a lot of it had to do with, again, her trying to find her identity, her trying to, feel like find a sense of awareness in whatever, escapism, whatever she had to do. So with that, I realized like I learned, like learning now that the abandonment, in abandoning herself and her kids for the sake of, the drugs or whatever it is, and not her being aware how now this would affect our relationship, because, here it is, you got to heal and realize within yourself, hold on, I really was abandoned in a physical way, not just emotionally neglected, through the abuse, physically, verbally. I realized like, whoa, I carried so much of that. I suppressed it so much. And this is what you see a lot of young men, that's why they immediately push to play sports or do certain things. But a lot of this, what they've experienced, they're still suppressing it. And I was one that still suppressed it. I realized I didn't have much support with my artistry. I didn't have much support in my, what they call immediate family, with things as such. There was no emotional support or encouragement. So when my sister, now at our later age, making a statement, or my mom telling me like, they say I treat you better and all like that. And, my sister saying like her mom, how, which I realize is like, they're just looking for that same love or support that I was. And even though they thought that, the relationship, just because she was more there physically or would do things for me, I came to the realization what a lot of it was is that through her wounding, through her whatever relationship she did not have with her father. And I'm like learning to connect the dots, is that through that, I realized she was smothering me. It was never a support to where like push me into my goals or push me into whatever I aspire to be. It was more of like a hindrance. It was more of like, I'll give you this breadcrumbing, some may say, or, bombarding certain relationships as I got of age, wanting to know where it is I'm at, so forth and so forth, because I realized I was a crutch for her. And that's why I see with a lot of men is that they grew up in homes where you have a lot of emotionally unstable women, or, women who are more driven towards their masculine and not really in the relaxation or in that feminine state to where they know how to be soft. And through their wounding or whatever they experienced or inherited from their mother, they projected onto the young men their self-hatred from, their internal self-hatred, not only for themselves and the feminine principle aspect, but also the masculine aspect of what they've experienced. So they project that outwardly from their wounded feminine, let me say that, and then project that out to the women and, to their children, basically. But so a lot of that I realized is that they thought that I was getting, much more attention, but in reality, I was being smothered. I wasn't being encouraged to build a healthy dynamic or a healthy relationship with women. I didn't even know how. And now coming to that awareness, it's like those fears still come up in a way and will come up for a lot of men, because you have to see how our character develop, or how we, develop our characters, develop our emotions, develop our mental, develop our, into the physical, our characteristics from this wounded aspect and from women and or men who are affected by those women, cousins, uncles, and so forth, promoting the pimping, promoting, the player, promoting the drug dealer, all kind of different narratives. I'm saying it looks different for everyone. And then them suppressing their emotions, and me realizing their domestic violence behavior had a lot to do with their suppressed emotions. Then I looked at the relationships with their mothers. They had a lot of internal anger, because a lot of what I saw in my immediate family is that I saw mothers talk to their sons as if they talked down to them. They destroyed them. They literally. And then now I know even some men, again, this is awareness, certain like 40, 50, that cannot let their mom go. That was the most challenging thing for me, is that in the physical sense and also in the spiritual, and emotional sense. Because you're talking about years and years of developing trauma, developing a relationship, an emotional connection. Now to come to that self-awareness, like, whoa, hold on, pause. That relationship was not healthy. And then you come to that awareness like, wow, I was treated like shit. And here it is, people through their eyes, my sister's assuming that I'm getting treated better. But I came to the awareness that, this was a mother who was hurting, who only could use the tools that she had, and through her wounded state or through her, her hell and her, there were times where she'd get up angry, go to bed angry, and she was creating her own hell, getting up in that. So I saw women, aunts and auntie, a lot of people get up in that mindset, and immediately their toxic behavior, they were driven off drama. They were driven off dysfunctionality. And so here we are, not knowing how to liberate and free ourselves, and now trying to do that now in our late 30s, early 30s, 40s and 50s, and men coming to this awareness like, whoa, both men and women. Because now I'm just going to make a part 2 about this, but now, I could just do it in this video, but again, me having the confidence to speak about these things. Because that's one challenging thing is that, karmic, or when you look at the energy, a lot of that things that are suppressed, sometimes I don't even feel like, as soon as I want to do a video, I'll be like, nah, those doubts, those fears come up. But in reality, again, it's knowing that I feel secure within myself. And what is this? Me acknowledging the emotion. Okay, what is this? I need to talk about it. I'm not looking for no one's approval. I'm not looking for anyone's acceptance. I'm looking at the bigger picture for those who have been affected by these so-called these patterns or these childhood traumas and experience, and trying to also liberate themselves as young men that are probably watching this, and or women, because I'll just go ahead and talk about this eventually. But I came into a lot of awareness of seeing how much of the feminine or the matriarchal aspect of this that I was breaking down to my partner, and seeing how a lot of these partnerships, or seeing how we are being guided to heal so much of the matriarchal. And that starts with the feminine principles, and then, both, and the masculine principles as well. And that's the masculine being the action aspect of that, the physical, and then the feminine being more of the internal. So I realize now I'm able to see the internal and external aspect of what my mother was going through, and then able now to see when I was talking to my sisters about now realizing how much of internal pain they also are carrying. Because you're talking about the mother wound, and shout out to, what's the sister? Seagoat Secrets. And I came across this video. I just talked about it on here. Where my journal is. Might as well talk about it on here. But like I was speaking about, I always talk about it on here. Yeah, talking about the wounded mother. You know what I'm saying? And I just wrote down notes. I don't even know how. Really, when I have spoken to my sisters recently, because again, I've been having to distance myself, and then I see that can be one of the most challenging things with a lot of people, because they have gains. They don't realize so much of their programming or their mothers and grandmothers programming, they're programmed to this. That a lot of their programming is rooted in wounding and pain and brokenness. And a lot of them probably won't come out of that. And that's how a lot of them see you through their lens. And that's what I had to accept, is that my mom there were times where I would try to mediate and be of a, peacemaker. But then I cannot ignore that the men that she's still interacting with, which has nothing to do with me, but it's the self-awareness. You cannot possibly try to see me through a lens of healthiness if you're still in the present, still interacting with men who are also in that wounded state, who are also still attached emotionally to their mother, and them not, people that are in their late 30s and 40s, and them not realizing the awareness around the loop that they keep going. This man hasn't, or trying to break generational chains or curses. So he's just literally unconsciously and or purposely pulling you into the same loop that you're trying to break. And that's how I'm able to see, like, these people are 30, 40, 50, whatever it is, but they still have a childlike mind, or they still have that inner child is wounded. So they really do not see beyond that. They just see for what it is in their circumstances. So when in reality, whether you want to accept it or not, they're dragging you to the depths of their emotional pain, of whatever their circumstances. And that's what I could no longer do. I could no longer, when I say letting my mom burdens and dad burdens go, I could no longer make excuses for why I cannot show up for myself daily. Step up in my own power. This shit took, when we talking about the healing journey, this shit took years to come into that awareness. That's why it's so divinely orchestrated. And now when you really interact with someone who's, has emotional intelligence, it's just another word of being in tune with self, being aware that, no, you can no longer emotionally manipulate me, because I realize that you're in a wounded state, and I'm accountable for my own emotions first. So and see, this is the thing, that a pattern that has been happening. And I've seen this happen with, recognize what happened to me. So I'm able to see the awareness when I see women or women go through this or do this with men. And that a lot of that has a lot to do with their own wounding. And so that goes even to the fact of, I remember, there was times where I told my partner, I was like, there was times where I was in a relationship with somebody I knew, or someone I was dating or whatever, and seeing how secretly my mom would interact or try to get close in a way, knowing that, again, through her own wounding, she cared nothing about these women, that I was seeing or whatever, or the women I was seeing at the time. But trying to get close because, again, due to her own wounding reflected back with men, there's something where she don't want to let go. There's a jealous or envy, or, there's something that she naturally compares, with herself with these women. And so what happens is, there were times where I found out later that she was getting money from certain people that I were dating. And like I said, I'm just giving it from my experience so you can see the mental disorder and the dysfunctional behavior of the mother wound from a man's perspective. Because I'm going to even get into how now I'm able to see it through my sister's eyes, through other women's. So when I learned about why this happened, I felt a sense of betrayal. Like, why are you trying to ask even, because they're unaware. The women, the women I was seeing or at the time, they're unaware that, she's masking herself at that moment to try to not only see what's going on or try to intrude or bombard my relationship, but to, secretly do things, and not allow, again, going back to the smothering aspect, there was no privacy. There was you can do these things, but in reality, there was no encouragement to be, more so independent, or more so, and you can see this happen with a lot of mother and daughters, and that's what I'm going to get on too. But I also see it reflected back in men, because, again, having a man there, a lot of his independence, with my the relationship with my mom and him, there was a lot of toxic and dysfunctional behavior. So I realized how that was playing out with my relationships, and seeing how the importance of liberating myself. Basically, I came to this awareness, and this, again, not to devalue no one, but I came to that awareness of seeing how my mother was just a catalyst, the karmic aspect of what I was here to acknowledge and experience with my princess, with my daughter. It was like all of that pain, that darkness, all of that internal rage, that childhood trauma, so forth, was literally for me to come full circle to see myself, my internal world, and see now through a lens of a man, how to see the wounded aspect, of what I experience with women and men, but mostly seeing the emotional aspect, the, not receiving the nurturing, because it was the opposite of that. It was the abusive nature, seeing the abuse around all of the wounding that she was experiencing. Now realizing like, whoa, I'm still to this present day healing through these things to even not just show up for myself first, but to be able to show up for, my princess and partner, and also to be able to build again, reconnect, reestablish, be restored with that love by loving myself, and be able to rebuild, more intentional relationships with women, on a business aspect, platonically, really now build relationships, healthy dynamics with women. So in the energy aspect, I've noticed how this has played out energetically through the old narrative, the narcissistic templates, because I realized my mom was that. She was wounded. She had narcissistic traits. She wanted to control the whole narrative. This my house, stuff like that some of us have heard. The child support things that I've talked about. Because in reality, I had to reflect on that. I'm like, how is that even, again, it affects everyone because people are going to have their own opinion. I'm not finna debate with y'all on it. I'm just showing how it took so many years for my dad to get to that place. And again, that right there wedges a gap because, did you do that purposely for revenge because this man wanted to choose better? Because he wanted to move on with his life, and him not wanting to choose to be with you because you are going through, you're in your wounded state, and how that affected him, and, him telling me about stuff in his life that why he made a decision when I finally reconnected with him around my before I was a teenager. So a lot of this, I'm connecting the dots and to help a lot of other people, or to bring more of an insight or enlightenment to the awareness of how much seeing how these dynamics with the wounds around our mothers, how this has affected everyone. So that child support thing, that man not wanting to deal with someone doesn't mean he don't want to have a relationship with his child or some forth. There was a lot of things that I realized that, again, I wanted, I know I needed. And so a lot of this rage or a lot of these things now are coming up. But I told myself I cannot let this haunt me and keep me from progressing. And so with that, again, that has been a determining factor with my relationships and trying to rebuild strong relationships and having to accept what to salvage. Doesn't mean you don't love people. Doesn't mean there isn't no compassion. There's an internal connection. But when you sever cords or you're letting go, that's a process of grieving and accepting, like, I can no longer hold on to the burdens and the wounds that you're going through, and allowing people to experience their consequences of their own actions, giving them their shit back. Instead of, us now, men and women, wherever you are, instead of trying to carry the load, because I'm seeing that play out with my sisters, I'm seeing this where I was, and this is why I want to talk about the mother-daughter duo, and how I was just writing notes. It said like the feminine principles, where I was talking about relaxation, peace, self-comfort, and love. Again, shout out to the sister that expressed that. Like, I come across things and it just gives me clarity to come and express to y'all. So this is what I'm saying. If we know our mothers are not know it's self-love and self-comfort, and to really be relaxed, and we've seen them be out of position or into this place where they're not honoring their feminine, okay, the opposite of that is self-hatred. Let's be real and acknowledge it. The opposite of peace is what? Chaos. The opposite of being relaxed is what? Discomfort. And this is a state that a lot of our mothers, or the old world or old templates have. It was built upon only now to be destroyed, to be restored, to be rebirthed anew, not only through our women, but through men as well. let me see, was this a note? A lot of our women have not felt comfortable in their own skin because it has been stripped with their mothers and or grandmothers. And societally, I put that, corporations and hospitals. You're talking about pregnancy that when they did not experience, natural peaceful births, where you have a lot of women don't even believe that that's supposed to happen. I'm not saying, because I'm just knowing from experience from women who have told me about natural birthing, and how when some people are like, what you mean it's painless? But this is the corruption I tell you about the hospitals, and going back even to the fact of how that pain that they experience, those things that they experience, has a lot to do with them carrying so much of the burdens. Let's say if a man or father, any support there emotionally, like it goes so deep, man. So we're talking about that narrative starting even from the hospitals, the pharmaceutical industry, the control around that, the emotional manipulation, the false sense of support around all of that. So, what else I want to talk about? Because again, it's like me talking about my internal rage and anger, again, had to stem from somewhere. And when I really have become self-aware of this, I realized that a lot of what I inherently was carrying had to do with not only the relationship my mother had with my father, but also the internal pain that she was carrying. And so I realized that how that affected me and or my sisters. What I'm going to get into is that, they didn't really learn. A lot of our women, y'all have to realize, is like mothers, so forth. Y'all didn't have mothers who knew about their self-worth and their self-value, because a lot of that, again, was stripped from their mothers, or, a lot of their relationship with their mothers had a lot to do with either jealousy. It was very intimidating. It was also very, they had mothers, and I'm going to talk about this with my family right now. A lot of us had bullies as mothers. And then a lot of our women has, mothers that were bullies. You thought it was, my mama just strong, and they were bullies. Never really gave you a sense of privacy. Never really gave you that sense of you wanting to step into your own awareness, into your own femininity. That's why I'm telling you, shout out the Seagoat Secrets, the video I shared in my community center about this, like about the motherly wound. And I'm able to, again, to just come as a man and speak about it, because I can see the connection, how it all connects, is the oneness of it all. Again, having that conversation with my sisters, and then one of her, her speaking about how she felt like I was favored, but not realizing, like, I can see the smothering. I can see, again, there still was no emotional support. There still was no encouragement. I was still dealing with a wounded mother just like they was. But it just looks different from my eyes, because here it is. I realize that they're looking for their mother's approval. Then I'm able to connect is that when I see the relationship with my mother and grandmother, there's no support there. And I'm going to bring y'all into my world, because it's just what it is. I'm coming from my experience. It's not to devalue anyone in any way. It's bringing awareness around what the fuck we've been going through, and how you probably can connect the dots with a different narrative. Is that my mom, like I said, she was out there on drugs and doing what she was doing. She still was responsible. But at the same time, when people that are battling with addictions or substance abuse, there's going to be times where they backslide. There's going to be times where they felt like, they're not living up to their fullest potential, or battling with this self-image, or their their inner image and their self-image. So, when I saw the relationship with her mother, my grandmother, I realized, like, whoa, now reflecting on it, there was nothing there that was built on a strong foundation of love, of authenticity and truth. There was a lot of trauma. There was a lot of bullying. There was a lot of abuse. There was a lot of physical abuse. Also, a lot of neglect emotionally. a lot of abandonment issues. So when we just assume that this is just, women are just affected by this, men too, we all are affected by this. I'm just able to speak from, a man's perspective, that knows the importance of the feminine principles that my mom had, we're dealing with, the wounded aspect, and then seeing how that trickled down to, her wounds centered around the masculine, the energy aspect, that is the oneness or, the dark and light aspect of how, she projected that. Again, that we're seeing that relationship, I realized and came to the awareness like, wow, my mom has been seeking my grandmother's approval. And I'm like, yo, whoa. I'm on the phone with my sisters and here they are talking about, you can just feel, and this is how I learned about being more in tune and seeing my connection with women and mothers and my mothers and grandmothers and so forth. And I see the dialogue with aunties and how they talk to their daughters. Oh my gosh, I mean, cussing them out. Just certain things, again, projecting their wounds, their fears, them not seeing the jealousy, seeing the envy, seeing the self-hatred around their own internal battle, and they never really want, and then seeing those daughters bring men around or seeing them repeat that pattern of, having kids by multiple men. No judgment. I'm just expressing the wounds and the reality, the actuality of how the cycle has continued. And then seeing how they talk to their kids. And then seeing how all of them, again, develop this character and not realizing, seeing the woundedness in that shit, bro. And seeing how I can see myself as those little boys, little cousins, I can see myself in them. Then I can see the little girls that they have, how they talk to them. I can see my sisters. Because my sisters are still, how that trickles down, they're looking for their mother's approval. They're looking for their emotional support. They're looking for the fact of trying to really be accepted. And so, not to mention, let's say women dealt with, which my mom never told me, or, whether it's true or not, a lot of things we don't even realize ancestrally that is inherited. Sexual traumas, sexual abuse, all these things that people talk about inheritance and always want to go to the monetary aspect of it. But in reality, we also inherit emotional things, spiritual gifts and so forth. And so with that, I realized, like, even conversing with them, I can hear the internal pain. I can see the escapism through, let's say drugs or whatever. Them trying to cope with it and not knowing how. So especially to our women, them not having no type of navigation, and then now coming to that awareness like, wow, hold on, I was emotionally abused and neglected. I was bullied. And then you seeing that play out through the women in your family. And I've seen this, being able now to come to that higher awareness of like, wow, it ain't just about me. I'm speaking on everybody in the sense of like seeing how this has affected everybody. So when I say before my sister, when she was, saying, oh, mama, had more favoritism, but I'm able to connect the fact of what she did not receive from her mother, and she's still seeing her mother as approval. And, seeing how my grandmother, she can see the disappointment or seeing or even comparing her life to her daughter's, and then her other daughter's life, seeing this daughter as being less or, wanting to see her do good, but at the same time, what about my grandmother's own internal conflict, own internal self-hatred or whatever? Of the fact of like her having to take care of, my mom kids, my aunt kids. There's a lot of stuff that a lot of mothers in, the hoods or whatever you want to call the projects and so forth, grandmothers that have been taking on the load of their mothers, their kids, and then them creating resentment that created an internal battle, an internal pain. So when they have a, connection with their kids, there's a lot of wounding, projecting there, because these grandmothers never really felt that they have really lived up to their, really have fun in their life. Because again, whatever these grandmothers' relationship with their mothers, obviously we're seeing a trend here that there was no type of, relaxation where they can sit back and relax. I saw that shit with my grandmother. Having to step up when knowing she didn't want to, but she needed to. These grandmothers step up and seeing the selfish behaviors in these mothers who don't want to take accountability in their actions. And this is where that generational curse, all that shit is broken. Because a lot of us now are here to step in our power, as men, as women, to learn to decipher that these relationships no longer serve us. Let mama and daddy and or them reap the karma and or harvest of their consequences. That's one of the most challenging things. Because a lot of us, when you putting your mother, this go for y'all mothers too, you putting your kids off on other people, and now that it's coming full circle, we realize like no one is exempt, yo. I saw my grandmother go through so much, and there were times, I realize now that a lot of her internal pain and what she was going through had a lot to do with the fact that a lot of these grandmothers, this anger and internal pain that they're holding on to has a lot to do with they never really had a moment to breathe, to relax in their femininity. Instead of trying to blame and say, it's done with pointing the finger. Think about your mothers and grandmothers. We want to say, our ancestors did all these things, but when you really look at it, a lot of them didn't want to. A lot of them didn't even have, they did what they needed. But now we're here to change that narrative, yo. Hey, was you back there? And that's how I'm able to feel my grandmothers realizing, like, if I look at it ancestrally, again, I see now the awareness with my sisters, but I also see the emotional aspect of what they went through with my mother. Then I also connect the dots to where, okay, what is it? Why am I seeing this pattern? Okay, let me recognize this pattern here. Okay, when I see the relationship with and this goes back to my sisters, they just wanting that approval from their mother emotionally, that emotional support. And I know they feeling abandoned or neglected. It just looks different from a man's perspective. And this is why I'm here to let y'all know it looks different from a man, a little boy, than what it is a little girl. Because naturally, women are naturally emotional, naturally nurturing, naturally more in tune or intuitive. Mother is the first teacher. So me connecting the dots back to my grandmother, I'm like, my great-grandmother, before she transitioned, I look back and I'm like, hold on, she used to isolate herself a lot. You talking about grandmothers, great-grandmothers, great-grandparents that went through a lot of what they call racism is what I call self-hatred. Have went through a lot of and lived through a lot of worldly things, vices, spiritual warfare, all for us to get to this moment, to see the fucking self-awareness. Where's the accountability? Because even though my grandmother didn't word it that way, you need to get your shit together. That's another way of saying you need to be accountable. And those of you that know, you grew up and you need to get it. It may not have come out a certain way, but we knew what she was saying. That was code for you need to get yourself together. But then here it is. We have, a lot of us men have been affected by women in these homes where we only saw a lot of women. We didn't see a lot of men who stood in their power, who were represented divine masculine. We didn't see that. We didn't know what that looked like. We didn't see a lot of men who were emotionally intelligent, who stood up in their power, who also held themselves accountable, but who also rest in power, James Baldwin, this statement of, if I love you, I'm going to make you conscious of the things you don't see. We didn't see men like that. A lot of us only saw men on television. You had your Martin Luthers, you had your Malcolms, you had other men that didn't look like us in the complexion. A lot of us only saw men who on television, the psychological warfare aspect of that, and or our women, a lot of them didn't know, a lot of help didn't really come from men that looked like them. Not saying all homes, but a lot of them only saw help coming from, when you look at this corrupted systems, a lot of them only saw hands coming from men that were light of shades. Come on, let's talk about it. A lot of our mothers in these places only saw the support from your Section 8 and all this other stuff that was literally created to divide. So a lot of that reality, again, our mothers been in these places where a lot of men on these programs wasn't allowed to come in because that was a part of keeping the family apart. Come on, yo. That internal battle, because them not having their protection, that immediately creates imbalance because you're in a home where there's mostly women, or a woman that has her internal, hatred towards whatever she experienced in her life with her, and whatever her relationship with her mother, even if there is one, or even if she has a relationship with her father. So that right there creates a home not only of imbalance, but that creates a home of dysfunction, because she's projecting onto those children, oh my God, your daddy ain't this, or this, da 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 da. Not to mention men in these places, the ones that go to these pretend wars. Yeah, I said what I said. The ones that go out here and fighting what? Fighting what? Fighting for who? I'm calling it out. Fighting for freedom? What about liberation? And you looking at the state of this country now. If our mothers keep, you can send a man out the war. I feel like all of that was orchestrated too. You can send them off, but at the same moment, our mothers, even if that man would have came back or not, what about the mothers? What about the credit being restored to the mothers that kept these empires, these foundations, these so-called false narrative, this false sense of power in these corporations going? If you didn't have those mothers in those hospitals, the women that were nurses, let's go back to the original practitioners, the medicine women, the women who gave natural herbs that, again, before these not dysfunctional, but these what do you call it? What's the word I'm looking for? These corrupted corporations of hospitals and schools and so forth. See, it was driven off fear, because if you didn't have these mothers as teachers, if you didn't have these mothers as nurses, if you didn't have these mothers, even in the politics, even anywhere around the world leaders. Yeah, you may see the man up front in the physical aspect, but that still are women orchestrating this, whether they're wounded or not. You can best believe behind these dysfunctional corporations, this dysfunctionality, there are women that are corrupted. But how did their corruption come to be? What is the hate driven behind that? So there's a lot that, again, that isn't vocalized because of the fear of these corporations that were built so our women don't speak about it, or you'll strip everything from them. And that's why all of it's being destroyed right now, to be rebuilt anew. So you want to talk about a divine mother? That's what's happening right now. Because we have to see the dysfunction and the wounding before we are able to bring forth the divine intelligence, the intelligence that are coming through certain vessels that will and shall not abuse their power. Because the powers there were women, and they know, and there were women who played a part in that, but there also were men too. So no one is exempt. Because a lot of people did these things for the protection of their tribes and so forth, out of fear, out of a lot of things. So a lot of, again, your pain, a lot of these traumas and things were inherited from mothers. The matriarchal. A lot of these things. So me realizing, how do I realize what I've been holding on to? When I look at what and how I develop my emotions, my nurturing, and what it is, how it is to be loved and to receive love, I got to look at mama and grandma and great grandma, because however they treated their sons. And then you see these sons turn into fathers, grandfathers. Why are they feel emotionally neglected or abandoned? Because it goes back to mama. And so a lot of I realize my internal pain and stuff that I'm expressing is because I realize what has inherently passed down, and how can I transmute it? How can I do it differently now? How can I approach this differently? I come with a part two, but then again, just the awareness around how I'm able to see through the lens of my sisters now. But even in that, it's learning to leave that behind and alchemize it. Because a lot of people, they will take offense, but at the same time, again, this is what our, people have been holding on to, the healing. It's healing now. It's a holistic way of going about this now. So I pray you get clarity about what it is you're going through. Then you're able to navigate those emotions, because there is no identity when you're going through this. You're going to change. You're going to shift. You're going to become something. You're becoming something that others won't recognize, because you got to realize this, that they only see you through a wounded state. And some accept that they won't even change. But that shouldn't stop you from being who you are and walking into your destiny. And loving yourself. Distancing yourself allows you to love yourself. Love those versions of you that your mama and father or anybody else told you to hate, or that they hated about themselves. Peace and blessing. Shalom.